the most intense sensations that our bodies register in relationship to trauma are along the midline in some way or another, whether that's the belly, the heart, the throat, the pelvis, right? Like there's a lot of ways in which all of that can be very vulnerable to experience.
Today, I'm joined by Dr. Arielle Schwartz, a clinical psychologist, somatic psychotherapist, and founder of the Center for Resilience-Informed Therapy in Boulder, Colorado. With over 15 years of experience studying and teaching polyvagal theory, Dr. Schwartz has been at the forefront of integrating this science into trauma healing through somatic psychology, EMDR, mind-body therapies, and therapeutic yoga. We dive into how the nervous system plays a central role in trauma recovery and how movement, nature, and everyday practices can support healing from the inside out. Whether you're a therapist, coach, or simply someone navigating your own healing journey, this conversation offers grounded insight and practical wisdom. Welcome to Wired for Connection, a polyvagal podcast. I am your host, and my name is Travis. Arielle, I'm so thankful that you wanted to jump on here and have this conversation. And I think the perfect individual to have this dialogue with about really, how do we stimulate the vagus nerve naturally? That's kind of like the meta. That's kind of where we're heading today. That's just to kind of give all the listeners, here's kind of the concept, but to drill it down more, I'm wondering, can you share a bit about your journey into kind of somatic practices, yoga, polyvagal theory, to give us some insight into that?
Yeah. My journey began well before I ever heard of the vagus nerve or polyvagal theory. And it really began for me in yoga classes and experiencing the way that yogic breathing and movement and slowing down really helped my emotional and mental health. And I got so curious about why I felt so relaxed, but also like engaged, alert, calm, prepared to handle whatever the world would bring. And I think that especially because I was prone to a lot of anxiety in my teenage years and early years in college, when I came to yoga practice as a young adult, it was so satisfying. I had something that I could do that helped me to feel better. And I could come back to it again and again, and it was accumulative. And because that was such a strong experience for me, and then I started to kind of open out just from yoga into other somatic practices and had similar experiences there, I just wanted to understand everything that I could about the mind-body connection. That brought me into a 3-year program studying somatic psychology as a master's degree program and EMDR therapy. And I became a yoga teacher when I was 22 years old. I mean, everything just kind of lit up for me. And then I went back to get a doctorate in clinical psychology. But at that point, I was putting together my studies of mind-body therapies, and my dissertation research was basically looking at why do mind-body therapies work? At that point, everything started to line up around the mind-body connection and the nervous system and the endocrine system and the digestive system, the reproductive system, the cardiovascular system, like how all of this is so deeply intertwined. And in about 2006, I first got introduced to the polyvagal theory through some of Dr. Porges's written papers. And I just would scour over them with my highlighter and highlighted every word I didn't understand, which were many.
Yes, I agree.
Right. But I just spent a lot of time really trying to understand it. And then I had my first meeting with Dr. Porges in 2012 and spent 6 hours learning directly from him, had so many light bulb aha moments, and just began to write about everything that I was learning from that point. It made its way into my first book in 2016. And actually a little kind of funny aside story on this, because we're speaking about natural stimulation of the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
So I wrote a blog on that topic in, I want to say maybe 2014. When blogging was still kind of one of the ways that we put our work out into the world, right? It still is, but we've moved into podcasts and other kind of voice to voice, face to face forms. But I wrote a blog on natural vagus nerve stimulation, and it was my first viral blog experience. And I'm watching this thing go from 1,000 hits a week to 1,000 hits a day.
Wow.
And I knew that I had touched something really important for kind of a key to mental health. And how do we work with the vagus nerve for trauma recovery? And so in some ways, the feedback that I got from that particular response to the blog, and then continued working with Dr. Porges and starting to teach this, kind of honed my career toward the applied polyvagal theory in trauma recovery.
And hearing that kind of character story arc of yours of shifting from your own anxieties as a young adult to finding yoga, to then practicing it and noticing this kind of compounding effect of you could have a tool to practice and you can do something with. And I'm wondering, because I'm thinking of like 10 questions right now. The first part is, when you first started yoga, was it an immediate like, hey, this is great? Or was there somewhat of a like, did you have to kind of work at it to find some benefit from it?
It's a great question. I certainly, as a teacher, see students in both camps. But something else about my background is that I was initially introduced to yoga when I was a little kid. My parents had both, my mom and stepdad were both yoga practitioners, and I was, being a cobra in a tree and a volcano and a lion and all of that stuff when I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
So I had a very immediate kind of playful association to the yoga practice.
Yeah.
So for me, coming back to it again when I was 19 and 20, it felt like a homecoming.
Okay.
And I didn't have kind of any parts of me, if I want to use that language, that were resistant in a sense. Well, that's actually not true. There's one area of yoga that took me a lot longer, and probably still in some ways is my growing edge with the yoga practice. I love the movement. I love the active practice and the mobilization, and I love the active breath practice. I struggle more with the slowing down side of things. I'm probably one of those that in Shavasana is when I notice that my mind speeds up. And there's a lot of people that live in that camp with me. I'm aware of that. Yeah.
And I appreciate you sharing that, because it is just for the, all those listening and tuning in and watching, because everyone's in a different space, and hearing, okay, there was already this kind of roadmap or loose foundation that you had these fun, exciting, playful experiences. Because I think it's, everyone's going to come in with different parts of ready to do, difficulties, things that are easy for them. Some people can maybe sit and be okay where the movements are. And so it's always good to hear kind of the realness of like a yoga instructor and their journey, because it makes it more human. It's like, okay, I don't have to have it all figured out, because I think a lot of times people enter these practices, and even anecdotally from all the clients I've worked with when I teach breath work or things like that, I think there is often an expectation of it. Well, it's been a week, or I haven't noticed anything, and my mind's still racing. And that's even to this day, one of the more growth edges, I like that reframe, is the stillness of the slowing down, where you find it easier to be more of that movement, that piece. And I think it's just it gives us insight to that we're all still learning and growing and practicing, no matter where we are, whether we're a teacher, a learner, instructor, we're expert or not, that we're all learning, and we have areas that we still got to work in. So I appreciate that, just kind of candid and honest response. And then maybe go to the next part, is this piece of your work in Boulder, is this integration of these more natural ways of stimulating the vagus nerve, and there are many, and its role in trauma recovery, and maybe specifically more yoga in the role of trauma recovery. So I'm wondering if you could speak and share a bit about that and what you're doing and what you're seeing in your work.
So maybe going back to that blog that I wrote in 2014, I remember at the time I was looking at some research about polyvagal theory and how it's beneficial for mental health and trauma recovery. And I came across the research on the electroceuticals, which were basically a set of electronic devices that were either being surgically implanted. At that time, a lot of the research was looking at those, kind of like a pacemaker that would either be placed above the heart or in the side of the neck, that would send impulses to the vagus nerve. And the results were extraordinary, showing improvements in everything from rheumatoid arthritis to epilepsy to depression, anxiety, PTSD symptoms, anger, impulse control. Like amazing research coming out about this stimulation of the vagus nerve through these electronic devices. And then kind of looking at the evolution of that research and seeing that some of these devices were achieving these results through transcutaneous stimulation of the vagus nerve, meaning through the skin, but again with a kind of bioelectronic device. And we can still see these on the market today. They're out there, right? And some that stimulate the vagus nerve through the skin around the neck or around the tragus or on the ear.
Yeah.
And so, I guess for me, some of those devices are expensive, or you have to get a prescription in order to be able to order them. And I was really starting to look into, can we effectively stimulate the vagus nerve naturally? Well, in a sense, yoga has been doing that for thousands of years, right?
Right.
And then, kind of putting together these kind of areas of interest and going, well, and I've been looking at this already for quite a while because I wrote my dissertation on this in 2006. And I was already looking at why are mind-body therapies working? What are the effective ingredients? One of those being that we're changing heart rate variability, that we are creating what we call more vagal tone, which is measured by a higher heart rate variability. And so now, kind of is all lighting up. So when we change how we breathe, when we change how we move, when we work with self-applied massage to some of these same areas of the body where the vagus nerve comes very close to the surface of the skin. In some of these spaces, the vagus nerve is like a quarter of a centimeter below the surface of your skin. So it's very accessible through self-applied massage and working with certain pressure points in the ears, in the face, in the neck. I'll pause there for a moment, but there's more, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, hearing this reminds me of, if you haven't, those that are listening, if you haven't listened to the previous episode, we had the opportunity of having Dr. Peter Statz on, which essentially is part of the brain man behind developing and using exactly what Arielle is describing. And in fact, he has his own on the market for external vagus nerve stimulators you could buy. It's relatively accessible. It's not breaking the bank, but it definitely costs an investment. And I mean, amazing. I didn't even know about this personally until I had the opportunity of interviewing him. Like, I had no idea this even existed. So it opened my mind up just more tools. And of course, my brain geeks out because I do EMDR and I love tabs and having all the different wireless ones. Like, wow, we have technology that could bring healing on so many different levels. And it excites me. And so I'm so glad you brought that up. And my brain went right to that interview with him and sharing.
Oh, I know him well, and I know his work well. And I think it's extraordinary to hear some of the stories again about the research and the efficacy. And, I think that the emphasis for me on the natural vagus nerve stimulation is, first of all, our natural vagus nerve stimulation devices are always with us. Right? They're free. If you're listening to this and not watching me, I'm wiggling my fingertips. Right. And so from that standpoint, it becomes an extraordinarily accessible tool and accessible to anyone around the world, regardless of circumstances,
Mm.
regardless of finances.
Yeah.
It's something that parents can offer to their children, that you can offer to yourself, that you could offer to your partner, right? Like, it's such a beautiful way of connecting to ourselves and to each other, nervous system to nervous system,
Mm.
and to offer the experience of welcoming ourselves as we are. And I actually really want to emphasize that. I think so often we think that vagus nerve stimulation is all about calming down.
Mm.
But actually, what I prefer to think of this as we're opening up the mind-body, the brain-body communication network through the vagus nerve, which is this beautiful superhighway of communication. I often use the metaphor that it's like a river, and that sometimes that river has sediments and obstacles and trees that are blocking the flow, right? Sometimes the river is in a flash flood and we have too much that's moving through us. And that when we do natural vagus nerve stimulation, it helps us find the right balance for ourselves that we need in any given moment. And it invites us to meet ourselves where we are.
Yeah.
So if we are feeling a bit more keyed up and anxious, we're going to notice that along the way. And we can combine it with compassion-based practices, with acceptance-based practices, which are also some of the working mechanisms as to why mind-body therapies work.
Yeah. And it made me think, I love that it's not, the goal is not always to calm. Often it can become a byproduct of with regular practice and healing and integration. But that's not, I think some people get so focused, and I'm thinking of a lot of clients I've worked with. It's like, well, I didn't calm down. It's not working because I still feel some level of dysregulation. We're being overly, kind of stuck in fight or flight still, anxious, afraid, worried, or I'm in kind of numbing shutdown. And I love the image of the river, of this kind of, are we being flooded, or are we stuck? And it's more opening up our awareness to become aware of this movement. And calm could, and I think eventually often becomes more a place where we can navigate to more frequently with repetition. But often I find when people first come in, I'm guessing even to your kind of your work out there in Boulder, is that they're probably more stuck in a state of dysregulation, more fight, flight, or vacillating between anxious, worried, sad, afraid, to now I'm overwhelmed and shutting down and numbing to a degree. So I'm wondering, with those individuals who are coming in to maybe doing yoga practices or other natural, natural remedies to engage in this, what are some initial practices that would be kind of like the first steps in stimulating vagus nerve or vagal toning that would kind of align with more of where they are? What are some things that you found to be maybe the most successful ones at this stage?
Yeah. I'll name kind of 5 categories. How about that?
Sure. Yeah,
That I
please.
like to come towards us with, and I bring them in a certain kind of order, purposefully, in terms of how do we begin to layer in some of these natural vagus nerve stimulation interventions for ourselves or for others if we're working with others in some capacity. And the first of these types of interventions are what I call discovering interventions, or in the polyvagal language, neuroception, conscious neuroception. Basically, get to know the state of your nervous system, map it, get to know what triggers certain nervous system states. Know when you're keyed up in anxiety or more of a sympathetic autonomic nervous system state. Know when you are feeling more in a shutdown or a fatigue or a collapse, an urge to hide, an urge to get small. What might elicit those different nervous system states at different times? So that's what we would call the kind of discovery practice. And then from there, once you know your nervous system, begin to explore what helps you come a little bit more towards center, right? So that if we think of kind of, I'm going to go in this direction for a second, visually, kind of a little bit more vertical, that if I'm mirroring a little bit of what we call a window of tolerance in trauma recovery, that in the middle of the window, I'm kind of living in some capacious way of responding effectively to my emotions, my sensations, my nervous system state. And if I'm above the window, I'm more anxious or keyed up and sympathetic. If I'm below the window, I'm a little bit more shut down or fatigued, depressed, a little hopeless or powerless.
Yeah.
And so the centering practices are what does bring me closer to what we'll call regulation. And regulation, again, doesn't mean that we're calming everything down. It means that we know how to meet ourselves where we are and begin to respond caringly or effectively to what we're feeling. So, the practices that would fall into a centering practice might be a balanced breathing practice where we learn how to breathe evenly between our inhale and our exhale. Sometimes this is referred to as resonance frequency breathing, and there's a lot of science behind it. But what we're cultivating is a higher heart rate variability or a coherent heart rate variability. So that every inhalation brings in a little bit of sympathetic and every exhale brings in a little bit of parasympathetic.
Yeah.
When we breathe rhythmically, we're strengthening that capacity to have more vagal tone. And it's sometimes an accessible resource. And some people go, oh, I don't really like to pay attention to my breath. It makes me feel anxious. So it's not the only natural vagus nerve stimulation resource. It's one of them. Others would be to work with some self-applied touch that help work with the upper vagus. So the upper vagus is what we call the myelinated ventral vagal circuit or complex, and it's our social engagement system. The upper vagus nerve works with other cranial nerves around our face, our ears, our larynx and pharynx in the throat, and so forth. And that basically we can work with some gentle stimulation that hopefully, again, helps us be more aware, respond lovingly and caringly towards ourselves. Before we started recording, Travis, I was thinking about what you were saying about attachment work in EMDR or attachment-focused EMDR. And much of my work centers around attachment as well, because I work a lot with childhood trauma and so forth. And in a sense, what we're cultivating is the ability to build greater attachment to self. And we can do that with self-applied touch and this gentle stimulation of the vagus nerve. But I link those together so that we don't get kind of so lost in the science that we forget that what we're really doing is holding ourselves so lovingly, you know?
Yeah. It made me think, and I'm wondering for the hell, because I have worked with some, and I'm sure you have as well, where sometimes the breath and the counting could become in an unfortunate byproduct as it becomes anxiety provoking, because now I lose count and then I get stuck in the anxiousness. And I've worked with some individuals there where where they currently are is that in that moment is not a helpful tool. And again, we learn as we have to adapt with the people we work with, right? Like what works for them, what doesn't. So we're kind of applying it. And I'm wondering with the holds, are there a few holds that from your expertise and work that have been beneficial? And as a secondary, just because I'm interested, working with men, is there any particular holds that you found to be helpful for them as they're kind of building this kind of connection to themselves?
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm really happy to share some of my favorites here. So some of the practices that I'll offer are pretty simple. And again, you might kind of go, well, what's this supposed to do? Why am I doing this? Kind of just trust it, right?
Yeah.
So the first point of contact that I'll offer sits right here between the eyebrows.
Okay.
And the kind of funny thing is that many of us just do this intuitively, right? Like when we're stressed, this is the shape that we take. Like, you're actually stimulating your vagus nerve, yay, right? But you can take your natural vagus nerve stimulation devices, your fingertips, and greet the points that sit here between your eyebrows. And whether it's just kind of holding those points or small circular movements in one direction or another, And sometimes these points are a little tender,
Mm.
right? We're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, yeah, I know that sensation," right? Maybe you're familiar with these points because of headaches
Mm-hmm.
um, or just general kind of furrowing your brow. It actually is kind of funny because sometimes these facial massages are like a natural facelift. We're actually working some of the muscles that can contribute to those lines that people go and get Botox for. But hey, wait, we could do this naturally too. um, so you can kind of self massage there and then gently work your fingertips across the top of the eyebrow.
Hmm.
Now, you know, it may not feel quite so, um, I don't know, quite so profound,
Mm.
but there's
Feels
a
good. I'll say that. I mean,
it feels good, right?
yeah.
It feels really good.
Yeah.
And then you can work your way towards your temples, and it can
Hmm.
feel really nice just to do a little self massage in one direction or another at the temples.
Hmm.
Now, next point that I'll offer is to go below your eyes. So, bridge of nose
Okay.
and then sliding outward on the top of your cheekbone as
Hmm.
if like you're going to gaze straight forward. Your fingertips are going to come right to the center underneath your pupils, so almost slightly inside from where you are.
And right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
And then maybe halfway between those 2 points that you were just at.
Right there.
Perfect. You got it.
Oh, sweet.
And then and a lot of it is more intuitive, so it's not like an exact point, but we can start there and then feel into any of those tender points, do a little bit of just hold or circular movement. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be super deep or tight. And again, it's another place where sometimes we're like, "Wow, I had no idea I had tension in my cheek muscles."
Yeah.
Uh, but there we go. And then you
Wow.
can again slide outward from your cheekbones outward toward your ears.
Hmm.
And then we'll do that kind of famous tragus point. So the tragus is the bit of cartilage that sits in front of your ear.
Uh-huh.
Thumb can go behind, forefinger in front. You can do both sides at once or one at a time. And then you just give a gentle squeeze.
Hmm.
And so when I've had conversations with folks that have worked with the surgically implanted vagus nerve devices, a friend of mine has one for epilepsy, and she got that because she wanted to get pregnant. And so I was asking her, yeah, you can do one at a time. You can work with your your ear pods there, exactly. So I asked her, how often does that vagus nerve stimulation impulse go off, right? What would be your guess?
Oof. Every 3 to 5 seconds.
Every 5 minutes. But
Oh,
it was actually a really good guess because I don't think that we realize how frequently it happens, right?
okay. Yeah.
Even every 5 minutes is a lot.
Oh, you're right. In a day, that is frequent.
It
Every
is a
five.
lot,
Yeah.
right? So think about how often
Mm,
our vagus nerve and our autonomic nervous system needs a little impulse
yeah.
to work optimally.
Mm,
Wow, amazing, right?
yeah.
So, the reason why I like to work with these very simple ones is because they're things that we can do
Mm,
on the fly
yeah. A few times a day, quite readily and quickly. Spend
a
like
few times
what?
an hour,
Like
right?
a few. How many? Like if you were to say a prescription, uh, you know, a few, a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes of spending doing that right there. You would say
So
every hour.
here's generally what I recommend
Mm,
around that question. I recommend having one longer practice in the morning,
mm-hmm.
something like 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be super long. And even 5 minutes, you're going to get so much benefit. But
Mm,
a bit of a longer one, it's almost like I don't know, maybe it's like your morning espresso, like you're going to kind of, right, like give
mm,
yourself an extra boost for the day. And
yeah.
I really mean it. Like we're talking about calm, but even just the little bit that we just did, I feel so alert. I feel so present,
I do. I
right?
was. I feel that too. Actually, I was already kind of calm and like relaxed. Like I feel a little more, even just kind of just
Yeah.
and I'm not making this up, everybody. I'm like, literally, I'm like, okay, I actually feel that feeling of just release I had a little bit there from this morning and last
Yeah.
night's sleep. And I'm like, okay, I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. But I want to come to your question about men in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's lots of different ways that we can work with the vagus nerve. And again, sometimes we need something that's a little bit more gentler, calmer, right? Like imagine you're,
Yeah,
holding your face and kind of holding that like you would a young child in a very
right.
loving way. Um, and I'm going to share kind of two more. One is, again, one of my go-to favorite, especially if you're feeling yourself kind of leaving that window in either direction. It tends to be a pretty quick, fast reset, and it's simple. It's to place one hand at your brainstem, back of your skull. If you trace the bones at the back of the skull, that's your occiput, and you just place your hand right over the base of your skull.
Okay.
Other hand to your forehead. And I would say maybe 30 seconds. And if you feel comfortable holding this up to a minute, and really coming back to combining the head hold with some of that rhythmic breathing. And since we're only doing a minute, we would probably take about 5 breaths.
Okay.
And right, and just allowing that feeling of holding your head and the rhythmic breathing. Eyes can be open or closed. Right? It's very simple.
Do you put a little pressure on or not?
No, it's actually a very light hold.
Okay, very light hold. Okay.
Yeah. Very light hold. So you're not holding your head in a vice. How about that? Good. And that's about a minute. Go ahead and release your hands. Yeah.
I'm glad I asked the whole how hard should, because my naturally was starting to, I was
Yeah.
pushing like pressure like
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the,
yeah.
I was like, oh,
Super
that's why.
gentle. It's a nice one to do when you're lying in your bed because it will also remind you that you don't have to push your head forward or back.
Oh,
Your head is
yeah.
kind of stable and you
Yeah.
just get to do the hold. Yeah, I'm really glad you asked the question.
Yeah.
So it's more about stimulating what we call neurovascular points that are in the forehead. They kind of sit on the two sides of center.
Okay.
And we're getting a little bit more dilation and blood flow into both the frontal brain and the brainstem. Beneficial all around, nervous system well-being.
Yeah.
Curious how that one felt for you.
Yeah, I feel it. I think the one I felt more initially from this first was this one. I felt this one more, but I like this idea of the hold.
Yeah.
Just
It's
a
a good
quick,
one
like
to
an
come back to.
embodiment. Yeah.
Yeah. The last one that I'll share for our purposes now is to work right here. If you trace your collarbones, and again, like a lot of our ancient systems have known about this for years. Like if you follow your collarbones to the point where you get the kind of like bone right before the divot here, and then go down below that, and maybe even just slightly out. We also tend to get some sensitive points here, right? In the Chinese medicine system, traditional Chinese medicine, pressure acupuncture, these are called K27 points, kidney 27 points. And, but they're also really powerful points for our nervous system. And you can self-massage, again, kind of circular movements in or out. And sometimes it can feel good to tap these points. And you just tap a little bit here. So some folks might think about other tapping therapies that are out there, right? We have EFT tapping therapies, right? And so we just basically are giving a little bit of tapping or circular movement. Some will prefer one over the other, or maybe both feel good for you. And then again, let that go. So I like the tapping in particular.
Yeah.
Or meeting, it's like if we're in anxiety, it's a way to meet it with some energy.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I think that'd be that makes, it logically makes sense too. You're meeting that energy, and then you could transition if you needed from the initial energy boost to maybe then massage or something or moving if you needed to. But yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
My next follow-up with this, how does it work with people who have a lot of like trauma, because the focus is trauma. So trauma in maybe people who've had to be disconnected from the body.
Right.
Are these some of these holds also really good at helping kind of titrate or bridge in, getting more safe enough in the body where they can be
Yeah.
there before they disembody? Because as we know, typically a disconnection is a form of survival, that it wasn't safe to be in the
That's right.
body or safe enough. So I had to disconnect. I had to kind of cut off, you know,
Yeah.
head from this. And I'm
That's
wondering, are these also similar practices that you would assign people to practice to kind of get more comfortable there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the experience of disconnecting from the body or dissociating
Mm,
or disconnecting from the sensory reality
mm,
of the trauma itself is, first of all, something that we can really deeply honor, as you and I both
mm,
do, is like, what a wise
mm,
psychological and physiological coping mechanism to not have to feel all of that,
mm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And as we're opening back up to feeling, very often the most intense sensations that our bodies register in relationship to trauma are along the midline in some way or another, whether
Mm,
that's the belly, the heart, the throat, the pelvis, right? Like there's a lot of ways in which all of that can be very vulnerable
mm,
to experience. So when we're working our way towards reorienting to body, first of all, is the client ready for that? I want them to feel like they're at choice
yeah.
rather than me telling them that this is right or that they should do this, because that in itself can reinitiate either compliance patterns.
Mm,
They're telling me to do this, so I should do this, but
yeah.
that might have mapping on historical trauma as well,
Yeah.
especially relational trauma.
Yeah.
So, as we build interest or capacity to turn towards the body, sometimes it's helpful to start at the periphery of the body
Mm,
and to work our way toward the midline, or
mm,
where more of those trauma sensations are. So we can maybe even just work with, again, the top of the head or a head hold if
mm,
that feels accessible
mm,
or grounding. Maybe those points around the eyes might feel accessible or a little more
mm,
grounding, or at the base of the skull.
yeah.
We might also work proprioceptively.
Mm,
So when we think about our sensory experiences, and I'm going to link this back to neuroception in just a moment, but we have basically three different sensory processing systems. We have our exteroception, which is our five senses, what we see, taste, hear, touch, smell. And those can be somewhat more accessible if feeling what's happening inside the body feels scary.
mhm,
So we might work with a sensory tool,
mm,
right? The olfactory experience of an essential oil, or we might work with the sensing of just being able to touch something, like an item from nature,
mm,
that allows us to just be with the texture and the sensory experience in the fingertips
mm,
rather than going towards the core of the body. And we can think about the vagus nerve really being kind of lighting up in some of those same areas where trauma sensations are strong.
yeah.
And we also have our interoceptive experience of what we feel on the inside of the body. And that
Mm,
may be a little bit more scary because it links us more to our emotions, which will link us more to our memories and so forth.
yeah.
So that's what we're kind of building tolerance for. Our third sensory system is proprioception. And proprioception is basically how your vestibular system in the inner ear work with your vagus nerve, work with the joints of your body to help
Mm,
you feel where your body begins and ends in space.
mm,
It's a beautiful way to start to work toward the body in a way that isn't all about that interoceptive sensing.
mm,
So how would we work with the proprioception, and why is that connected to the vagus nerve,
mm,
right? And it is.
yeah.
Proprioception works with the the inner ear, the vagus nerve, as we've kind of explored a little bit at the surface, has many neural connections into our ears that both help us sense kind of work with sound and attuning to the sound of the human voice and the maternal voice and soothing sounds and so forth. But also our ears function to help us balance, to help us sense where our bodies begin and end. There's a lot of response to gravity that happens within the inner ear. And our ears receive feedback from the joints of the body, the wrists, the elbows, the shoulders, the hips, the knees, the ankles, to kind of gather all of these proprioceptive feedback that lives with the proprioceptors that live at these joints and the synovial fluid that moves through these joints. And so when we're kind of sensing into the periphery, for example, just simply rotating your hands around your wrists, your feet around your ankles, it's helping a little bit with building some of that proprioceptive feedback. You mentioned a little bit about one of your children having some neurodiversity, right? Mine as well. And we worked a lot with occupational therapy that kind of worked with joint pumping and skin brushing to help them build some of that proprioceptive sensing. So neuroception pulls in these three sensory systems of what we, see, taste, hear, smell, touch, what we feel on the inside, and sensing our bodies in space to help us determine whether we're safe or if there's a threat or if we're in danger, right? Life threat. So when we can't feel ourselves in relationship to gravity, when we can't feel where we are in space, our nervous system struggles with that sense of safety. I don't know where I begin and end. And that's really common with trauma. So other practices for the vestibular system and the proprioceptive system are really gentle, slow movement. So whether that's my hands like in a hug or one hand to heart belly and just slowly swaying a little bit side to side, or forward back, or sitting on a physio ball and bouncing a little bit, or even getting onto a mini trampoline and bouncing a bit more. So bouncing, swaying, rocking, swinging are all going to give us proprioceptive feedback. And when we do that mindfully, right, we start to give the brain the nourishment, the food that it needs to feel where we begin and end.
I love that. The science behind it's always so fascinating when you read it, but on a practical level, with working with the many clients that come across our doors, everyone's a different place, but specifically the ones that are really, because primarily out of survival, they needed to be disassociated, disconnected, is helping them titrate and having movement, like simple, like just getting and working with them where there's enough trust, where we're building that strength, that memory, that felt sense, that awareness, little by little. In so many different windows in which we can engage that. It's not just one, but it's many. And I think sometimes the job that I find, is intriguing and sometimes difficult is, where is that initial, I'm not sure if you've had this, but where is this client, and what are those entry points in which I could help them begin that process? Because sometimes it is, we gotta have to feel for it. And sometimes it's exciting to figure it, but also like, okay, where is it? Having all these different windows are so helpful.
Earlier when we were speaking, I was sharing the first two of the different kinds of interventions that we might bring in. Discovering interventions, what is the state of my nervous system? Centering interventions, which is where we might do conscious breathing and we might bring in vagus nerve stimulation. And then the next of those kinds of interventions are what we would call the balancing interventions. And balancing in this context doesn't mean standing on one foot.
Oh.
And it's actually the recognition that when we are seeking balance, to find balance or equanimity, if you are standing on one foot, your ankle and leg are not still. Your foot and the muscles of your lower leg are constantly doing little micro movements to help you maintain balance.
Right, right.
So when we think about balancing from the nervous system perspective, it's about all of the adjustments that we need to do to upregulate or downregulate our nervous system to handle the everyday stressors of our world. And there will be many of them, right? That's the nature of being human.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
going to navigate stressors, stuck in traffic, late for a meeting, kid having a meltdown, an argument with your spouse, looking at the news. I mean, right? It can be, living in a war zone, being fearful that you're not protected by your country. I mean, massive stressors that can be small every day or larger. But we know about individuals with trauma, and I speak this as much as one who's been through this journey myself, as well as someone who works with others, is that when we have a history of trauma, our stress resilience gets reduced.
Right.
And those kinds of daily exposure to stressors, whether it's the news or the traffic, have a bigger impact on us, and it's harder to recover. So when we work with the balancing practices, we get to place ourselves in the driver's seat of our nervous system, where we know the tools to downregulate out of anxiety or to upregulate out of fatigue so that we can have a really smooth ride.
And I love that image because it's so true. And our body's constantly pivoting on the foot and the balance. It's like those micro movements that sometimes we're not even aware of happening because the muscles it's happening so quickly. And I love that analogy and image for those that are working is like, yeah, your body's working a lot to keep that. And seemingly big movements if you're about to fall, and other small, tiny ones when you're kind of in that space, but nonetheless, it's holding and it's shifting, which means to the question is, with the whole, this concept of trauma. And I'm wondering what would you encourage or say or respond to someone who's coming in to do the work and wanting to change, and yet they have the discouragement because maybe they've tried different, I'm just going to put a big umbrella, I'm going to call it therapies, big umbrella, generalizing here, nothing's really worked. And so, now I'm coming here to do this, and this is one more thing. I'm trying this breath work or this. And so, if someone was there, how would you encourage them, or, as a hope merchant for them of engaging in a practice like this, and in a way, maybe even setting expectations in a way that's more creating even safe enough, even the expectations that we set. 'Cause I think sometimes people come in and they're tired, they want it to work, and they really do. And then when it doesn't, I think they quickly get into survival mode again. Like, well, one more thing doesn't work. I've tried this. I've tried this. I've tried this.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to start by meeting whoever we're with right where they are.
Right.
That sounds so challenging, right? To have tried so many things, and up to this point, nothing has really worked. And you still feel so stuck inside of these symptoms, right? And to just experience what happens when we feel so deeply met, so deeply heard, which is applied polyvagal theory, right? Like that is where we start. And then from there, we kind of might even explore how long has it felt that way? That no matter what you tried, nothing was really going to work.
Yeah.
It may have felt like that way a really, really long time. Yeah. And I think that what we're going to lean into here, as you said, is a merchant of hope, which I love that phrase. And sometimes I've also had clients say to me, don't use that word. Hope is a 4-letter word for me, right?
Sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. You're right.
Right. But there's this way in which we want to just say, what if now could be different? Right?
Yeah.
Are there any small things that we could start to explore now that help you feel that you're starting to move in the direction that you're hoping to arrive at, right?
Mm.
And it could be like, and it may feel small, and it may feel imperceptible, and it may feel really slow. And we're going to keep holding the frustration of that, because if you have years and years and years of what we'll call kind of wiring in your nervous system in a certain direction that takes you out of balance, we're working against a lot of conditioned experience in your nervous system.
Yeah.
We want to be really respectful that it takes time to, like when we look at the shifting of glaciers, which might be a bad example nowadays because it's a little depressing, but
Sure.
that movement of the glacier
Yeah.
is slow.
Mm.
And yet when you watch over time, it's amazing. Here's a better example. I use this metaphor a lot. When we're changing from winter to summer, from those two solstices, right? Every day, it's a pretty imperceptible shift in how much light or darkness we have.
Right.
But over 6 months, it's dramatic,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And so what we're working with is those everyday increments where we're stretching the nervous system in these small ways where it's just a 5 or 10 minute difference in how much light or dark we're getting, right?
Yeah.
But over time, it accumulates, and we have this really significant shift.
Mm.
So there's a little bit of like, can we work with that buy-in? And can we do our trauma recovery in a way that feels, as you said earlier, titrated, slow enough that we don't get the rubber band effect, right? Like we stretch, we expand, and then we contract because that was scary.
Right.
Or conversely, we go towards too much rest and relaxation, and we go into alertness because I feel like I'm going to fall into the abyss.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, because I think even those that are listening right now, I'm sure it spoke to someone listening, because I think that's such a more and more I've heard more of that. The more I've done it, I've heard more individuals coming that have tried things, and not to say those things weren't zero impact, but where they are, they're feeling that defeat, hopelessness, like I'm trying and I'm still not better, or things aren't really improving how I would like. And it's, we're trying, again, meeting them where they are, but I love the way in which I felt it even across this our virtual time here, that, I could sense that. And obviously I'm sensing you. So that's a big part of it, is your presence is felt through this screen, which is a big part, is the person you're working with, I would say. And, this balancing and different ways of coming in, and through yoga, through breath work, through touch, and I know some other ways we could, singing, humming, so many ways in which we could stimulate vagal toning, connecting with nature. I know you shared going on hiking, and myself too, I love the ocean, I love trees, and, sitting in the sun. Music is a big one too for me personally, and playing my guitar and feeling the strings vibrate and just kind of sitting there is really soothing for me. And I think having these practices in so many different ways for all of us is how we can begin to heal trauma naturally. And it's about, I think, some level of consistency. I think it's that we got to be consistent. We have to do some level of regular engagement.
So true. So true. I'll share the last two layers of this kind of five type of intervention model, right? We had discovering, centering, balancing. The fourth one is the energizing practices. And it's worth just naming it really brief, because the energizing practices can be really empowering. And it is actually where things like weightlifting and mindful running, mindful, dancing, aerobics, whatever, sometimes even on the yoga mat, if we have a really vigorous practice, right? There are ways in which we actually need those states of elevated heart rate and elevated respiration to enhance our well-being, right? It's great for our cardiovascular system. It's great for all the systems of our bodies and for our nervous systems, to know that we can go into those elevated heart rate, elevated respiration, and know that we're safe, and feel it as empowerment and joy and play and excitement, rather than fear, panic, anxiety, right? When we feel our heart going fast in our chest, sometimes with a history of trauma, we have that immediate association something bad is going to happen.
Right, right, right.
So this is really all about reclaiming new perceptions of yourself, new cognitive meaning making when we have those big, alive, full energy experiences.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the fifth one that I'll just name really quick, the fifth one is discover, center, balance, energize, and calm.
Mm.
And we do have calming practices as part of the whole model. It's just not the whole model.
Yeah.
So the calming practices let us go into meditation or yoga nidra or deep relaxation practices so that we can learn to sleep well at night. We can repattern our bodies to go into rest and digest. We can receive the nourishing benefits of meditation and relaxation without dropping into fear that if I become still, I can't protect myself. I have to stay vigilant. If I become still, I'll go into a black hole. I'll disappear. I'll fall into the abyss.
Yeah.
And those types of experiences may have been, again, that kind of coupling of calmness with trauma. And so we continue to uncouple these nervous system states so that we get to live in the whole range of our humanity, our humanness.
Yeah. I love that image of uncoupling our nervous system states from the trauma or the pain or the hurt, that all these states have restorative and goodness to them.
Yeah.
And I think it's more when we get coupled or stuck with, and these things become this natural perception of this is a threat or not safe or dangerous, that I get into a survival state. But there's something about energizing that's good and good for the body, good stress that grows us, pushes us. And I love the weightlifting, because that training it gives us the capacity. It's like breath work of, like, if you're a swimmer, you've been holding your breath longer, you begin to feel more confident. But initially you're exhausted, you're tired, but the more you do it, you have control of your breath when you swim. You can hold, you know how to hold and breathe in correctly to get that deep breath and not get fatigued. But that takes practice, just like calming does. And I love these five ways, or what word you would use, not ways. You said the five
types of interventions.
5 types of interventions of how we engage this. And I think there's, even when you hear all these 5, there's so many ways in which we can go about that. And depending on where someone is, we have all these different entry points and what they might need, or maybe where they already have a strength with. We can add this now. And I'm wondering if people wanted to find your work, if they wanted to read about and engage with, or even work with, where could we find you? Where can we go? Where can we send them?
Yeah. Well, easiest thing is just look up Dr. Arielle Schwartz. You'll find me, but I'm out there. And the model that I was just sharing here today, these 5 interventions, this is the structure for the Applied Polyvagal Theory in Yoga book. So it takes you through how do you apply these 5 types of interventions. It's written for therapists to use with clients, and gentle ways that we can bring natural vagus nerve stimulation into psychotherapy sessions, into trauma work. I have other books of similar nature, Therapeutic Yoga for Trauma, which is about how we bring this onto the yoga mat or into a yoga class. I have the Polyvagal Theory Workbook for Trauma, which is my latest book. Wow. This just came out literally a month ago, April 2025. Yay!
Congratulations.
And I know. And this book is written for the client. This is written for the layperson, for anyone that wants to start to bring these practices in for yourself to work with your own trauma. And they're all basically mind-body practices to work with resourcing around your trauma without reliving the past. So we get to really rewire the brain and the nervous system into states of greater regulation.
Wow. That's so great. And very exciting for you. I'm sure a big a hurdle, right? It's like, it's finally out. I know writing and releasing is not, it's a marathon from my understanding.
It's a big process. Yeah, I'm grateful. It's my 8th book, so I've been around that block a few times.
Yeah.
And it's very satisfying. Each of the books are actually really quite different from each other and complement each other in different ways. And in terms of just how you can stay in touch with me, I've got a YouTube channel at Dr. Arielle Schwartz, a Facebook page, Dr. Arielle Schwartz. Instagram is Arielle Schwartz Boulder. Lots of nature photos there.
Yeah. Well, it makes it easy to find you, which is good. It's the same,
Yeah.
the names across, good branding and marketing. And for and those that are listening and or watching, everything you're going to find here will be in the show notes. You can click on it; it'll be clickable, linkable to all of Dr. Schwartz's work and what she's doing, what she will continue to do. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time today, and even walking us through. Again, if you're just listening, please go watch it, because Arielle really showed us, and you get to see me holding my face too, showing some of these practices in real time. I think what a great thing. We get to talk about it and show you some things you could do right now today in your home, and you have a few things that you can practice every day. So I just wanted to thank you for your time and just blessings to your work.
Thank you so much. Really a pleasure to be with you, Travis.